and welcome to MySecurityTV and our Tech and Sec Weekly. My name is Chris Cubbage. I'm the Executive Editor and Director for MySecurity Media, and we have a special it's a normal Friday episode, but a special interview with Certis Group in Singapore. I'm just going to run through my slides as I normally do, and just 1 second. I'm getting some private chats. Can't see you. Okay, just keep I've got some people in the background and who are distracting me. How about that? So we'll get underway. Today we've got Fuji Fu, the Chief Digital Officer with Certis Group in Singapore, and this follows off an interview I did with Fuji in Singapore last year during Interpol World, and I visited the Certis Group headquarters. So it's been going to be good to speak to Fuji once again. I just really want to highlight the events that we've just had this week and also coming up next week. We had the pleasure of visiting Malaysia this week, and our interview with Dato Amiruddin Wahab, the Chief Executive Officer for Cybersecurity Malaysia, and we looked at Malaysia's National Telecoms Cyber Security Strategy and the MOU with HGC Global Communications. So that is now available, obviously, in our YouTube channel. If anyone's listening, if you can press like or welcome any comments and hellos, it'd be nice to know that we are streaming. I know that we're on Facebook at least, but we should be streaming on YouTube and LinkedIn as well. On Monday, we've got the Active Directory security with Alcid and Trustwave and Spider Labs' Kevin Tran. Still need to register for that, but registrations are going strong. That's going to be at 1 o'clock on Monday. So visit MySecurityTV and you can register for that. Otherwise, just hashtag MySecurityTV and you'll see the links there. But looking forward to this, we're going to be doing some live demo attacks and obviously looking at the importance of Active Directory in the threat landscape in relation to that. On Thursday next week, we're getting the agenda finalised now, but we have our virtual awards. It's going to be at 2 o'clock in Malaysia time, so obviously that's Singapore time as well. We'll be running for about half an hour, but we have the top 10 women in security in Malaysia, and that is in partnership with ISACA and ACES International chapters, with SECRA, Women in Security and Resilience Alliance, and the Malaysian Women in Security. So it was a very strong field, very prominent judges, and looking forward to announcing the top 10 winners there. And I've just finalised some interviews next week. So next week will be our final sort of week of MySecurityTV until 2021. But we're doing a couple of space sessions. We've got Southern Launch and also Dawn Aerospace. And James Powell there is in New Zealand, and Lloyd Lloyd, in fact, I don't know where you are, Lloyd. I imagine you might be in Canberra, Sydney or South Australia somewhere. But we're going to get a catch up on these two companies, and then the following Friday, so that'll be next Tuesday, and then on Friday we've got Gilmore Space with Michelle Gilmore, the Director of Gilmore Space Technologies, and Peter Kim, the Head of Sales as well. So this follows off our Indo-Pacific series and a number of space episodes that we do, and anyone who has been sort of watching and following knows that aerospace and space is right within our domain and our drasticnews.com channel. So that's pretty much it from me. I'm going to bring in Fuji. Fuji, here you come. In fact, I'll get rid of that and then bring you in. Fuji Fu, how are you?
I'm good. Morning, Chris.
Very good. Now we caught up last year, and I think I might even get you to sort of harp back to 2019. You did a launch of your Security Operations Centre, and it's really interesting now to sort of speak to you 12 or 18 months later and get an update. So maybe just talk us about your role, your Chief Digital Officer, and then also the centre that you've been running there in Singapore.
Sure. First and foremost, thank you for having me here.
Great.
So, last year when we spoke, we launched our Certis Centre for Applied Intelligence. So I'm the Chief Digital Officer. Right? My role essentially is really looking into how do we transform as an organization? How do we move towards tech? How do we move towards using so-called digital capabilities, whereby we are able to really provide more value to the customer, right? And we can actually help them better. Whether it's from experience perspective, whether it's going to be literally from productivity perspective, that's what we're looking at. So with this Center for Applied Intelligence, essentially we are looking into all the different technologies, whether we are actually looking into in-house or collaborating with institutions, for example, or even startup NMCs, and having to really drive towards operationalizing it. So it's to us, my role is really looking into how do we operationalize the technology and apply it such that we can actually realize the full benefits of that.
Great. Fuji, I'm just going to ask, do you happen to have a microphone? You sounded fine prior to coming on. Do you have a sort of headset microphone by chance?
Unfortunately not. Let me just try to see whether I can.
Although that's good there. So I think just maybe a little bit closer to the mic is much better. Thank you so much. So look, we talked about you're really working across the security sort of scope. And in particular, you were working at the airport and a few other sort of key areas. And this recent announcement on sort of the next gen sort of security solution and network security, talk us through that. And if you wanted to sort of do a brief presentation, I know you've got some slides available.
Yeah, sure. I mean, if it's okay, I'd like to share some slides.
Yep, here they come. And I'll pop off screen and welcome you to talk to those slides. I'll come on if I've got any questions as you walk through.
Sure, no problem. I think for Certis, we have recently launched the smart network security, but I thought maybe I just want to take everyone through the journey in terms of what we have done. So I think the whole organization, when we first started off being part of the Singapore Police Force, as we transform and literally look into launching the new Certis back in 2018, and when we met last year in 2019, this is where we actually have this whole entire new way of offering in terms of security plus, how we are able to break the silos between, the different departments in terms of synergizing, putting together security, facility management, even customer services together, underpinned by technology. And so this today, we are actually a leading integrated services security organization that is providing leading edge technology. Right. I think let me just move into this whole entire context of smart network security. So essentially, when we look into smart network security, the whole idea is how we are able to really provide security and safety within a very high density space itself. And in this particular scenario that we are sharing is our Tampines Hub. Our Tampines Hub is the largest community space in Singapore, where we are looking at a lot of members of public that will be actually performing activities over there, for example. Now, this is where we actually integrate this whole entire advanced technology, leveraging on our purpose-built robots, coupled together with artificial intelligence. I think more importantly is really at the back is really the trained security staff, where we actually bring together the whole entire smart network security. So in that, essentially the outcome they're looking at is really, number one, how are we able to enhance the experience, orchestrating the operations, and of course, giving the insights. I think as you've shared, right, basically the productivity gain they're looking at is almost up to about 25%, right? In terms of with this entire smart network security, we are then able to enhance the productivity. At the same time, we are able to enable our officers to perform high value tasks. Now, this is a picture of exactly what the smart network security is about. So fundamentally, if you actually look at the screen where my pointer is, the whole context of smart network security revolves around what we call the operations. The way that we run the operations, we call it concept operations, right? The concept ops will be the one where we actually fuse in technology like the AI-enabled so-called surveillance cameras, or even the robots that we spoke about, right? The one that where my mouse is this is our Krista. Krista is our concierge security robot. And we have Oscar is our outdoor surveillance robot, and we have Peter is our curbside robot. So fundamentally, all this does not actually operate in silo. The beauty of the smart network security is actually built around how we actually secure a place, especially in a high density space, right? And how we are able to leverage on manpower together with technologies like AI and the robots, which are built for very specific tasks, such that we can actually enhance the security within the location itself. So basically, from a layman perspective, Chris, any questions?
Yeah. I just wanted to talk a little bit more about the robots. The application, you mentioned curbside, which is the static one, and then you've got the one that can be mobile. How are clients sort of using those? What's been the interaction between clients and the public, and how they're perceived?
Okay. So maybe let me just share with you each of the function of these robots. The one in orange we call Peter. Peter is our curbside robot. So fundamentally, it actually helps to manage the traffic flow along the curbside. So what Peter does is that they will actually pick up vehicles, for example, who are parking too long along the curbside, and then from there they'll be able to trigger the notice to inform the driver to move on, so that we do not disrupt the traffic flow, or in certain extent cause a potential threat in terms of safety to the passengers along the curbside. So when Peter actually through the AI picks up the vehicle that has been there for a while, what it does is that he will actually be approaching the vehicle, the driver, and then along with it, we will actually share the so-called the advisory notice advice to the driver, such that they are able to move off. Of course, should there be situations whereby the driver choose to remain there, then Peter will then be able to signal to them and indicate. But of course, it's actually built along the rules and the policies. And should there be a situation whereby the driver refuses to move off, then of course that's where the human intervention will come in. Peter will then send the signal back to the command center. That's where the officer will then be dispatched to address the person there. So that's the
Peter. So Peter's not doing any giving out any tickets or anything like that. He's just communicating the timing, right?
Yeah, that's right. Peter doesn't give out the ticket. Right? I mean, technology is possible, but of course, depending on the policies and the use case there, Peter has the ability to recognize the car plate and the car make as well. So all this information that. But having said that, based on the so-called policies and the procedures there, what we'll do is that we will implement according to the guidelines given by the authorities or the respective customer. Right.
And are these running through sort of an application level? How much is being processed within the robot itself? Say for I imagine you've even got some facial recognition, but number plate recognition. Is that running through at an application level, or is it needs to be done at the edge on the robot itself? Kind of how is that working, and the interaction? Because imagine if it's an application, whatever that robot is doing and seeing can be seen at a security officer or a parking officer can also access that. Maybe just go through the sort of the actual operational layers.
Sure. Within the robot itself, the whole entire casing and the framework is secured. So within this whole entire, we call the robot OS. Basically, there is the edge processing unit. The edge processing unit will take in the input from all the devices, like for example the onboard cameras, any additional sensors or the lidars, etc. So all the inference in terms of AI, when we actually do all the inferencing in terms of identifying the car, the license plate, etc., is actually done at the edge.
Yeah,
which will be the one that is processing the images. And should there be the so-called exception cases, for example, like, I need to send the information back, or where there's a vehicle that's been there for more than 30 minutes, there's no driver, etc., that metadata will then be sent back to the command center, where it's actually managed by the multi-services operations orchestration platform called Mozart. So the information from the robots will then be pumped back into Mozart. And that's where we will actually trigger all the SOPs in terms of the standard operating procedures in terms of what we need to do. Right, and that is seamlessly orchestrated between the man and the machine.
Yeah. And what kind of distances and latency have you been able to work within? Because I imagine sort of messages. I imagine there's preloaded sort of audio messages on the robot itself. But can you then create a speaker sort of setting where you can talk through the robot potentially?
Yeah, in fact, you're spot on. Within Peter, in fact, within all the robots itself, they have the audio functionality. So technically speaking, what happens is that it actually does play a so-called advisory notice in the form of the display as well as audio as well. Literally, they can actually speak to the driver and share with them that, please move the vehicle away. But having said that, if there's a need, for example, a video so-called function can be triggered such that immediately the driver or any of the members of the public will be able to speak to a live officer, right, who is actually from the command center. So can you imagine, right, the robots are actually our force multiplier throughout the entire compound, because it's not possible for a human, for example, to cover all areas, which is where the robots will complement us in terms of having to sense, having to perform certain specific tasks. But then where there are scenarios whereby you need human intervention, that's where the human comes in. And that's exactly how we design the ops. And that's why we pride ourselves by saying that we are very much driven by operational design first.
Yep. How are you finding the offices like that force multiplier? Because Singapore's been, increasingly recognised in terms of its robotics and advanced technology. How much? What have you found as the gap between, say, the security officer, or, for want of a better word, a traditional security officer, and the ones that are playing the force multiplier? Is there a training change there? How are you filling that gap?
I think along with any digital transformation, the upscaling is very, very key, which is why we have the Certis, a corporate university that actually focus into how do we upscale, right, our officers in terms of appreciation of how we can use inputs from the robots, how we are able to interact with the robots, for example, whether it's going to be a case whereby when Peter actually identify a suspicious vehicle or objects, etc., or likewise for Krista, how they be able to act on it. I think this is the part where the skills enablement, the training and upscaling, and along with it, change management.
Yeah.
Right? In terms of how do we bring our officers up such that they can acquire the advanced tech user skill set. And I think that has to be done concurrently, which is why I think we advocate really the case of the way whereby we have actually leveled up in terms of changing our guys to become multi-skilled, right, workforce. They are able to perform the security task now more effectively in a more productive manner. At the same time, they are skilled now to perform higher value tasks, and then of course using technologies like Krista's and Peter and Oscar.
With I noticed that it's not drones in there, and I appreciate sort of the Singapore landscapes might, the cityscape might not be suitable to some drones, but is there drones in this platform that you're building here? I mean, you've got various robots and ground-based vehicles. Where are drones potentially sitting in here?
Yeah, actually, drone is actually part of the solution that is in the picture. Astron is our drone solution. Because for the particular launch, we are talking about our Tampines Hub, which is actually covering this scope. The drone will actually be an extended arm in terms of the so-called security area. But of course, today, if you look at the context, we do actually look into a deployment of drones especially for surveillance of large areas. I think it's very applicable in some of our countries where we have presence, like Australia, for example, right, where drones will literally help to speed up this whole entire engagement.
Yeah. And just to clarify, are you partnering with who are your technology partners here, and sort of which part are you doing? Because I think again, we'll have the links to our last interview. You've got various partners. You mentioned the university as well, so you've got some PhD potentially in there as well in terms of researchers. How much are you building for Certis to use that will be proprietary to Certis, or is this all off the shelf type technology?
Okay. So our approach towards digitalization is the case whereby certainly we do not want to reinvent the wheel. We want to be able to work with strategic partners to literally grow. So for us, in the case of a smart network security, the entire platform in terms of the orchestration layer, in terms of the software that is in the robot, as well as the back-end software, we call it Mozart. Likewise for the robot command center, all this is actually built in-house, right?
Wow.
And that's very key for us because that actually holds all the operational context and insights, right?
Yeah.
The way we use data, the ways we use AI. Now, having said that, right, with this platform itself is actually scalable in the sense whereby it can integrate different type of robots. If we look at the robot base, for example, we do not intend to actually reinvent the wheel by having to, build another autonomous base, because there are a lot of autonomous systems out there which we actually will partner. Now, the important part is really how then do we actually communicate, secure that autonomous base, and then integrate such that it can perform the task of Oscar or Peter, right?
Yeah. So again, what you're saying there, you're not building the sort of the end sort of devices, so to speak. You're building that central management platform that brings it all together, right?
That's right.
Very good. And I know we did talk last time in terms of that smart response and how you can start to really limit down in terms of response capabilities. You know, it might be the closest officer, the closest resource to that. Any advancements there in this? And if you've got some more slides, welcome to proceed on, Fuji, in terms of
no problem.
the
I can
actual
use this
hub
slide
that
to
you're
just
building.
cover that. So there have been quite a lot of advancement in that area. So while we have the smart network security, in fact, one of the key things that we realize is the amount of data that we're getting. Data in the sense whereby it could be whether it's a sensory information, where it could be from sensors like the toilets or whichever, right? Or it could be really AI-driven information like the likes of this maybe anomalies that's coming up. So all these informations get populated. So we have been doing a lot of work in this area of what we call data, as well as artificial applied intelligence, right? How we use them. So when all this information comes in, then we are actually looking into how we actually make sense of it and how can we actually optimize the deployment. And in this particular scenario, the deployment now could actually be a robot that is actually being dispatched because it's the nearest so-called officer on the ground, right? To see whether we can provide further assistance or not. So there's a lot of effort and time that we are spending to literally operationalizing the use of this data. And I think the last time that we shared with you is the applied intelligence, how we use AI, how we use data, how do we actually use autonomous systems like robots as part of the way that we will so-called serve a high density location like OTH. So that's the kind of work that we have been looking at, and we have made some tremendous so-called improvement in terms of work, in terms of what we are doing there.
I think how are you capturing the learning that you are probably doing? Is it more operational learning? Is it system improvements? And I always ask 10 questions at once, Fuji, but the operational learning, maybe where those operational learnings are coming from. And then in terms of the system design, the improvements that you're making, is it reducing latency? Is it improving that metadata that you can share? Those types of things. And then also the design of the environment that you're operating in as well. What improvements for the future should be getting made for these types of applications where you've got various ground-based, robotic autonomous systems? Is there any improvements that you're thinking environmentally that need to be thought about for future sort of precincts and cities? So there's three there. If you can remember them, I'll remember them.
Sure. I think if I were to really just talk about really how we are going through as a process-wise, right? So basically, as an organization, one of the key things that we want to do is we want to look into operationalizing all this technology. And I think one of the fundamental things is really how do we codify it? Codify in a sense whereby the way that we are designing our operations around using tech. So we want to be able to codify and operationalize such that it becomes a reference model, right? Moving forward, for example, like a precinct or high density locations like that. That's number one, codify it. Along with it, once you have codified and once you have operationalized, is really a case whereby how do we create, as in Certis, we have this thing called the CSDS, Certis Service Delivery, so-called model. In that, we literally look into putting in everything such that is something that an ordinary person, for example, can do extraordinary stuff by literally following through in terms of the tasks and stuff as such. Now, the key difference that we actually took is the case whereby whatever we are working on, we will typically implement it within our facility, for example. As such, it becomes like a living lab. A living lab where when we operationalize, we get all the feedback, we enhance until a point of time whereby we have gotten a satisfactory level that we think that, okay, it's good enough, and that's where we work with the client and we will implement and roll out for the customers. And through that process, the capturing of the knowledge, the capturing of the task, like, oh, in fact, we need to have certain skills or we need to have certain metadata to be captured as well. So that is a continuous process that internally, we are quite pleased that, Certis as a framework, we do have the DevOps kind of backend, how we capture and how do we do continuous improvement and deployment. So those are things that we actually factor in as part of this whole deployment. And the last track is really a case whereby the enablement wise, and that's where we work with our university, okay, to see what are the skill sets that we need now. How do we enable our staff, right, for the different, so there will be a track for our officers to be enabled to really know how to interact and operate with advanced systems. Then there's also another track for a different type of talent. The talent will be really the digital so-called technology talent that needs to be able to understand what is ROS within robotics, for example. Yeah.
And we've covered robotics quite a bit, and it's a very multidisciplinary area. Do you find, and I mentioned we've got some space interviews next week. They're pretty much out there. They need to make mistakes so they can learn. You find it's okay, the environment, the culture that you've got there as well is one that it's okay to make mistakes and learn from it. How do you do that in a sort of a security setting? You do that in a more of a controlled environment. And as you say, that process of continual learning, those making room for errors along the way. How do you manage that? Whose job is that to manage that? Is that because you are the chief digital officer there? Does that make you are you running the show there, or is there someone else that sort of sits besides you to look after the things like the management and the culture?
We are actually so-called, we have a lot of teams which are running together.
Yeah.
So we, on one hand, number one, we have the ops team. The ops teams are the ones that are the users, because essentially the smart network security is part and parcel of operations. So essentially our officers will be working closely with the robots and the AI as well as the Mozart platform to literally use it for the day-to-day operations. So in fact, our guys are the ones which are using, which is very different from a traditional technology company, for example, where they'll just implement. We are literally using it that will benefit our customer. So I think that's very, very key. So to address the point, in fact, one of the key learnings that we have is really through that living lab that I mentioned to you. Whatever we do, we operationalize it internally first. And we will be able to define what is the SOP internally, such that we will be able to address most of the operational challenges. It's not just about, frankly speaking, I think rolling out a robot is one of the less difficult tasks that we have. The operationalizing of the robot is, in fact, the toughest.
Yeah.
The way that
not making it, trying to make it autonomous as possible, right? Otherwise, you're just driving a remote vehicle.
Exactly. So it's like, we really have to define, number one, when this happens, so what do you do? Yep. So to us, really, we really go down to the level of details as to, it doesn't mean that we are just putting, CCTV on wheels, right? At the end of the day, the so what has to be addressed. If a robot actually, for example, detects that there's somebody who's smoking, so what do we do? So that's where we spoke about, we have the display in terms of showing that the members of the public that this is a area that you can't smoke, or we can even play the announcement. But after a certain time, for example, if the person still persists, for example, and that's where, what's the next step? So the thinking behind the operations and the process and the policies, etc., all this has to kick in. And I think that's seriously the tougher part, which is why, in fact, a lot of our attention is really on this thing called the human-machine collaboration, right? How could we actually leverage to the max in terms of the autonomous system to serve us, rather than just having it to be moving around?
Yeah. And that's when it really will kick in as a force multiplier, as you say. Where the other one was the environment. You mentioned, I mentioned the airport, and this latest release, you're working in a hub environment. Is there, obviously I can see airports, hospitals. Is there really any area that you do find that this can't operate in? You pretty much can operate in any potential environment. And the flip side question might be, where is this really suited to this type of force multiplier? Where does it really work? And you're finding that operationally the client is getting maximum economy of scale, I suppose.
Yeah, we reckon that, in fact, in deployment areas whereby a precinct setup, for example, a hub could be a transport hub, it could be a mixed development hub, for example, will benefit a lot from literally this force multiplier. Because typically in an area where you that's huge. For example, the effectiveness in terms of having to have a person to cover the whole area is lesser, and it also doesn't make sense for us to wire up the entire place with surveillance cameras, etc. Which is where it's a combination of this robotic systems, and it could also be a cleaning robot, for example, will come in where it will really help to provide the level of security and safety to the visitors or the owners within the precinct or within this whole entire so-called hub itself. So those are the areas that we reckon that it will be pretty much very effective, right? And especially in areas like a precinct, it really would serve a lot because this common so-called force multipliers could be actually helping across multiple buildings, etc.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
What's the business model for the client coming to Certis? Is this a sort of a modularized level of service? Because they might, the perfect client might start with a guard on the front door, but before you know it, they've interconnected all their buildings and they're running this as a precinct sort of model. How does the business service structure work?
In fact, when we actually so-called conceptualize this and we started to test on the ground, one of the key things we ask ourselves is that, can we just have a robot, for example, or can we just have a Mozart? But in fact, we realized that the true benefit of this is really a case whereby it is a new delivery model where it comprises of this whole entire context of having to have a centralized multi-service orchestration platform to give us a situation awareness together with AI and robotics, etc. So I think that's the true value that this smart network security will bring, because we don't treat AI as a silo, because even if you have AI that triggers an alarm, so what? Likewise, if you have a robot that detects an anomaly, so what? So that the part about having to put everything together and we are able to operationalize and run it, I think that's the true value that customer will benefit. But having said that, of course, different clients, different customers will have different needs at different times, right? Which is why our customers can be starting off with officers, for example, and I think one of the key things that we really advocate is in the digitalized world, there's really a lot of benefits that we can get by having to leverage on technology, right? Especially in the post-COVID environment, how can we actually enable low touch? How are we able to really provide force multipliers in a very manpower scarce market like security, for example? So this combination of different types of tech, but importantly is the skilled workforce is key.
And now you're in Singapore. I believe Certis is here in Australia as well. Where are you? You're just keeping this local to Singapore at the moment. What's kind of the pipeline for you, and where are your key sort of operational areas before we close it off?
We operate in, we have a presence in Australia and Hong Kong, likewise in Middle East as well. In fact, the solution is not just limited within Singapore itself. It's just that we have a customers that actually started up with us as a first site. But then essentially what we're looking at here is that the entire smart network security will be available to our customers in Australia, right? Likewise, where we have presence as well. Yeah. Right, and that's the plan.
Do you see? Have you come across any? Well, maybe we could touch on cybersecurity. That's obviously a critical aspect, but we might save that one because it's probably a big area. Have you sort of touched on cybersecurity? Do you see any potential issues there? And then the second part would be regulation. Are you seeing any potential regulation barriers on the deployment of security technology in this way?
Okay, so in fact, I like this. These are two important questions that we have raised. Cybersecurity is very critical because the last thing that we want to have is a situation whereby the backend operations has been compromised, or likewise the robot has been compromised. Somebody is able to take over the robot and create havoc, right? So which is why for us, cybersecurity is never an afterthought. It is actually part and parcel of our product development. So we have an in-house cybersecurity team that actually looks into how do we secure literally from the data in transit, the data at rest, and even the communications back, for example, the monitoring, etc. So that part is actually being taken care as part of delivery. I think this is very, very, very important because today the threat of cybersecurity is real, right? Which is why we actually embed cyber within our solution itself, and I think that's very, very key, rather than doing that after.
Yeah,
The
it's
second
going to
part,
be too late then. Go on, sorry.
exactly.
Yeah.
It will be too late that, oh, I've built a robot and then let's look into cyber security. No, the answer is it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
When we build, we have to build with cyber security embedded in the first place. I think that's fundamental. The second part you have brought up is also very important, which is data privacy. So data privacy, especially in this case, there are concerns that, you're capturing my picture, for example. Will you be repurposing the information, for example? So which is why for us, we will adhere to all the local policies specific to data privacy in terms of how we manage the data, how we use it, etc. So all this will actually be applied. And in terms of how do we secure the data, how do we make sure that we don't repurpose, all these things are actually captured clearly, so that the clients will be having a piece of, in terms of it can be rest assured that we do not, nobody can even, either ourselves, for example, we can actually use the data for any other purposes.
Very good. Well, look, on that note, I've probably got about 20 other questions, but I'm conscious of time, Fuji, and I do appreciate your time. Let me just bring up your proper title here. We've been speaking to Fuji Fu, the Chief Digital Officer of Certis. Now, I'm not too sure if anyone is actually listening, but there's an opportunity. If you've got any questions, you better fire them in the next couple of minutes. Fuji, what's the sort of the pipeline or the roadmap for you? Just continue. I mean, it sounds like you're almost, you're there. You're operational. You've got various robots. You mentioned the drones out there as well. It sounds like you've got it all coming together quite nicely. What is the roadmap other than rolling this out across your client base?
The roadmap moving forward is really the case of course, how do we actually operationalize and make it better as well. I think the other part that we are really looking into is in the area of Secure Plus, like what we have shared with you, orchestrating of services across the organization. How could we use digital technology, particularly the data, the advanced analytics part, as well as AI part, such that we can move into really exciting areas of creating more value, enhancing decision makings, etc. So we are actually putting the next phase for us is really, with all this in place, how do we use the data to make, or to even create more value? How do we actually use AI to complement all these operations as well? And I think that will be some of the interesting things you'll be hearing from us, perhaps, right? In terms of maybe that in a couple of months' time, you can hear from us in terms of what we'll be doing, rolling out soon.
Very good. Look, there was a video. We couldn't get the audio working, and I think I did have the link that I can. So we'll have that in the show notes. Double checking. Yes. So there is a video on YouTube that you can watch. We'll have that in the show notes. But otherwise, thank you very much for joining us there from Singapore. This is sort of interview number 2, and I look forward to the third one. Hopefully back in Singapore, I can visit the center and meet some more of these robots.
Sure.
Beautiful.
Thank you for having us here as well.
Thank you. That's Fuji Fu, the Chief Digital Officer with Certis. And we were, let me do my little thing here, our smart network security, next generation security solutions with the Certis Group. Fuji, I'll let you go. Thank you very much for your time. And just from the audience perspective, I'm just going to walk through a few more of our events coming up for next week. Thank you, Fuji. All the best.
Thank you. Thank you.
Have a great Christmas. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, let me just share my screen here. As we close off, I just really wanted to just highlight some events that we've got coming up, and also, as I normally do, the report of the day. This is Amnesia 33. So those in cybersecurity would have been hearing about this for a while. Some 33 vulnerabilities found, and then 4 of these vulnerabilities are critical in Amnesia 33. This came out from the Forescout Research Labs. It's on the marketplace, but the study looks at the results of the security analysis of 7 open TCP/IP stacks and a report of a bundle of the 33 vulnerabilities found in 4 of the 7 analysed stacks. There's a few comments coming out towards us from other vendors and the like, so it does sound to be quite a prominent find, and thank you to Forescout Research Labs for releasing that. On Monday, we are going to have our Active Directory session with Alcid and Spider Labs, the Trustwave Singtel company. So that's with Kevin Tran and Ben Moody. Please go to mysec.tv and the link is there. The first cab off the rank, I suppose, and that's 1 o'clock on Monday, Sydney time. So you do need to register for this particular session as we are doing some live demo attacks. On Thursday next week, as I mentioned, the top 10 Women in Security in Malaysia awards will be held 2 o'clock, so that's 5 o'clock in Sydney, otherwise 2 o'clock there in Malaysia, with the ISACA and ASIS chapters in Malaysia, and with SECRA and the women in Malaysian Women in Security as well, and looking forward to that. And then on Tuesday, we're back with a live MySec.tv and our Tech and Sec Weekly. We're going to have the Southern Launch Group and Dawn Aerospace from New Zealand looking at what these two companies are doing. And there's a recent announcement with Gilmore Space, and looking forward to speaking to Michelle Gilmore. I'm assuming there's a relation there, and also Peter Kinn, their head of sales as well for Gilmore Space. If you want to check out some of the news on Gilmore Space and others, it's on our drasticnews.com channel. There's plenty there, and some announcements next week on our channels on what we'll be introducing in 2021 as well. So on that note, that's enough from me. Thank you very much today. Thank you to the Certis Group and Fuji Fu there in Singapore. And we'll be back. You can join us on Monday for our Active Directory security session with Alcid. Otherwise, we'll be back on Tuesday afternoon for the Tech and Sec Weekly. Thank you very much.